At the beginning of our self-discovery journey, it feels that most of us have a very clear identity. And this identity, we think that we must hold on to.
I was wondering with you guys, like, what were some of the key tools or key strategies when it comes to telling yourself, like, I am okay to be exploring these things, even though I may be the only one in school or even like in this city or maybe like even in this country like doing these things.
The 5 notes of the musical scale are similar to the 5 elements in the body. And because there are 5 elements in the body, you need to have a balance of the elements before you can get mind-body harmony.
No, I think actually like what I'm hearing is that your awakened journey starts since you were young.
Yeah.
Because that's the...
When your body signals to you that something is a no, you trust it. And that also takes time because there's so many layers of conditioning where this is how you are, this is what you're supposed to do, this is how you're supposed to be. I had a health crisis probably, 15 years ago now. Of course, went down the medical route, but didn't quite work, and then had to find other ways to manage. I was around when there was no internet.
I was around, we're revealing our ages right now. Let's not go there. But yeah, and so...
Today, I'm super excited to be joined along by not 2 individuals, but 3 individuals here to talk about our awakening and self-improvement journey. And on my left here, we have Ryion, author of Awaken Purpose. And if you've seen our previous episode, you would have seen him featured there. And here we have Michelle Saram, a renowned Singaporean actress and also a wellness coach.
Hi.
And we also have Dr. Samuel Wong, the founder and principal consultant of SW Creatives and also the creative director of the TENG Company. So before we get started with discussing these topics, I think it's very important to set the context for the audience here on where we are all coming from, because one really great thing that many people discover on this awakening or self-improvement journey is that there's no one right way to do it. Everyone has their own unique stories because we come from distinct backgrounds. So why don't we get started by going around and sharing how we got into this industry and this field, starting off with how we were before we started realizing that there's more to life than like the normal everyday things that we experience, and how we've been really feeling lately as well. So I guess just starting out with myself, I've gone to this whole self-improvement journey around 3 years ago when I was around 14 years old. And I started out with really like the basics. So I wanted to discover more in life. I thought there was more than just going home, being an actual teenager, just playing video games. So then I started really fixing my routines, doing things like cold showers, hitting the gym consistently, trying this routine, trying that routine. And eventually that got me to a point where I discovered self-actualization, which is similar to self-improvement but different in the sense that it tells you to find what naturally flows for you. Because what I realize nowadays in self-improvement is that people tell you that there's a fixed way to become like the ideal self, like you have to be doing these particular things. But what I found out over time is that, again, everyone is distinct, so there's no one right way to do it. So then most recently I've been exploring self-actualization and trying out many different routines, in particular like meditation, and I'm looking at different consciousness maps, which we could talk about later on, and many different things. And even though some people may say that some things are not scientifically or academically backed, what I believe is really about finding your personal truth. Like what resonates with you the most matters, because like at the end of the day, it's like you can only feel certain things yourself. And there are some types of knowledge, which is like self-knowledge, which other people can't really understand. So it's really about hosting this space for all of us to be sharing our unique stories. So yeah, Ryion, why don't you share a bit about your story as well?
Sure, wow. It's definitely didn't start at 14. So, like I really like impressed with, the journey that you're going through, Bosco. I think for me, I started really I wasn't actually even conscious about starting it. That's like get to your point of like everyone is totally different, right? I think it's like somehow the universe is just kind of guiding me to the direction. But I would say the first opening point was in 2019 when my father passed away. Right? So that's when I started my meditation, which is therapist. My therapist gave me that's the only thing that I went to see her once. I said, I'm grieving. I don't know what to do. And then she said, why don't you just start meditate for 15 minutes every day? And she didn't tell me when to end. But then did not end, and I'm still doing my meditation until now. So 6 years later, every day I do a little bit of meditation. But I think that's the opening of it. So it was for me, it was like a natural, because something happened in my life that I need a remedy, and that came to my life, and that's how it started. But it's very interesting that when that started to open up, and I do it every day. And then probably after a few years, and next things happen. And because I truly believe that because I'm always in the technology, as a professional, so then what came through to me and information that come through to me is always through technology. So I would have like very interesting topics and interesting self-improvement topic coming through either through YouTube, podcast, or some sort of that actually got me curious. And Michelle would know, once I'm curious in something, I go deep, and I learn everything. And then I would decide whether I like it or not. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of is my journey. For me, is that I'm just feels like know that things will come into my field, and then I just take it, opportunity, I pick it up, and then I just learn everything. And that's kind of how I like open up one door at a time and kind of lead to this process of where I am today.
And we're very fortunate because you share what you learn and discover, and you distill it as well.
Yeah.
Which is great, because then we get to absorb what you've absorbed in a much shorter time and decide whether it suits us and whether we want to do the deep dive. That's how it works, right? You're supported by your community.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're on separate journeys, but kind of, in sync in some ways, and you're sharing and you're supporting each other when you have a question or you're like, this came up for me, that's what really helps.
Yeah, and you basically add curatorship as well.
Yes.
And so you distill things and you actually help other people as well in that sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually like if I look at my professional career and my spiritual growth part, it's actually exactly the same. Because in my professional career, it's what my highlight, right? What I always get the good point is also about distilling like very complex information, and then help the leadership to decide certain things.
That's your gift.
And then it's the same when I do like whatever it came to my field. I just go deep, I learn, and then it's like, okay, 90% not useful, 10% useful. Share that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's me.
Yeah, super cool. So Michelle, why don't you share a bit more about yourself?
In the same way, there was a challenge. I had a health crisis probably 15 years ago now. And because of that, I had to really try to understand all the different pieces that, led to the health crisis, what it really was. Of course, went down the medical route, but didn't quite work, and then had to find other ways to manage. And that's when I started to do things like, nutrition courses, and then realizing that nutrition as an integrative, holistic thing also includes not necessarily spiritual as the first step, but also energetics, right? The things you feed yourself that are what you look at on the phone, the friends that you're with, the conversations you have, the things you focus on. And then that also led back to, the things that I learned in childhood, whether it's yoga, whether it's some kind of breathing, whether it's some kind of a feeling that there's something bigger than this, right? And what are we actually here to do or to learn, and how all that works with the physical as well. All your different, layers of body and energy. And again, it was a process. And as I learned each thing and tried to integrate it into my daily life, it was also in conversations with friends that was like, oh yeah, so this is how this works. And this happened for me. And also I had to integrate more movement in my life. And I loved things like Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu, but I also went back to doing more gyrotonic, which is an evolution of Pilates. And not knowing at the time, but it also works with breath and movement, and everything is circular and it's your spine, but it's also stretching your fascia. And it's helping you to release things that are stored in the body. That's, the body keeps the score and all the trauma. And when I did very specific work around spinal energetics and where trauma is stored and how to release it, it really sort of tied in with so you can do this on a daily basis to maintain, but also there are more intensive things that you can do, right? With the breath, with intention, to release the things that you may not even realize are trauma or that the body recognizes as trauma, and then it's stored somewhere. And then it starts to affect your emotions, and then it starts to affect your physicality. So then it's just understanding the different pieces and going on a journey and learning different modalities and having fun with it. And that's where I am today, still learning and still having fun.
But they talk about somatic side of it. Actually, it's so true that I also went through, like, as part of this journey, I also went through a lot of the somatic Tai Chi, the Qigong, also did the Pilates,
right?
Yeah, the gyros, have all those, like, but that's actually like that open up is not only a mind, right, or like using the mind to try to figure it out, what is my growth, what is my purpose, but it's like including the entire body intelligence.
Yes.
It's that whole system.
And reconnecting with the body intelligence, where you start to trust your body again. When your body signals to you that something is a no, you trust it. Mm-hmm. And that also takes time because there's so many layers of conditioning where this is how you are, this is what you're supposed to do, this is how you're supposed to be. And that's reinforced by society, by the roles that you play at work, in your family, at school. And learning to trust your body when it's like, ew, no, is a process as well, right? So it's like, do you trust the outside voice? Do you trust the inside voice? What does the inside voice actually sound like? You have to get to know it. And that's also a very interesting process.
And it's very hard for, like, professional like me, like in the corporate world, like you guys are more artistic, creative side. So having this, having like the intuition, is part of your job, versus for us, right? It's almost cut off. So to reconnect that part was actually, it took a long time for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine how there's lots of resistance in the process as well, because our ego and our mind is super loud, and we're always, especially in the beginning of our journey, we always compare ourselves to other people, and we start to question, like, why are we like the odd one out, even right now, because we're in a transition period where more and more people are starting to reconnect with our bodies. So I was wondering with you guys, like, what were some of the key tools or key strategies when it comes to really grounding back to yourself and telling yourself, like, I am okay to be exploring these things, even though I may be the only one maybe around me, like in school or even like in this city, or maybe like even in this country, like doing these things.
Does Sam have some insight?
Okay. I think as the person who is a little bit the furthest away from this whole entire conversation, a little bit of background about me first. I'm a pipa player, and I started playing the pipa when I was very young in Singapore. At about 16 or so, I won a national competition, after which I went to China and I studied in this very famous institution as an exchange student in China. And I learned from really good pipa masters in one of the top schools in China at that period of time. Following which, I came back to Singapore and I did communications. And then I did my graduate work, my PhD in musicology. And this was done in University of Sheffield in the UK. After that, I had stints where I worked in Amsterdam and I worked in Bangkok. And then I worked as faculty in a university for 15 years before recently sort of like stepping down to do a little bit more travel. The interesting thing about me is that my identity shifted 3 times. The first was as a musician when I was young. And so I was very in tuned to the idea of creating an artistic work, but being the best that you could be in the world, because I was surrounded by literally the best in the world. Thereafter, when I went to my graduate school, then I turned into a researcher because my PhD was in musicology. And in all these research methodologies, research methods, the ability to think in a very critical way and express it and communicate it in a very academic way started being downloaded into me. Then there was also the next part where I started my company. My company, the TENG Company, is one of the largest music companies in Singapore. It is a fusion of East and West. It does music that fuses East and West. But it is a pretty large and established company. It's about over 21 years old right now. It has 3 divisions, a social impact division, an artistic innovation division, as well as an industry empowerment division. So each of these divisions runs various different products in which we find ways to take music, bring it to society, and do it for good. Can society benefit from the power of music? Whether it might be scholarships to underprivileged children, all the way to being or playing music as part of music therapy to hospice settings, or even creating train chimes. In Hong Kong you have the MTR, but in Singapore we have the MRT. So we created train chimes for the visually handicapped to be able to travel better, so they'll know when the sound comes in. This is this thing called applied musicology, where we take music and find ways to put it into practical settings so that people in everyday life actually work. Recently, we created this thing called Music for Mindfulness, and it was a research that I did together with the Singapore Institute of Technology on sound beat technology. So there's these things called binaural beats and monaural beats, and we infused it with my own understanding of the ancient technologies of Chinese music. We merged them both together. So the ancient Chinese believe that the 5 notes of the musical scale are similar to the 5 elements in the body. And because there are 5 elements in the body, you need to have a balance of the elements before you can get mind-body harmony. So we treat sound as medicine.
Yes.
And I didn't know this until I was working on a little bit of this research. And so because of the identities I mentioned, I took this ancient technology, evidence-based it with a university because of this academic experience, created a product out of it from my entrepreneurship in the TENG Company. And so I am sort of like a hybrid mix of business, art, as well as, I would say, academia. And I wouldn't say I really had a mindfulness journey in that sense, but it was a case that I had all these tools which I accumulated all the way till I was 40. And then they started converging. And when they started converging, I just suddenly realized that I had the ability to do all these weird things. It's like a third space, you see.
Yeah.
And that I could do it to a very high level, of credibility. I mean, previously, we were mentioning we didn't know whether this worked or that worked. Yeah. So I don't really come from a space where, this meditation, but I know how to take things, break it down, distill it, restructure it, and rework it into something that's adaptable and contemporary. And for this reason, last year, I set up a company called Samuel Wong Creatives to deal with thought leadership, this type of speaking work, and to deal with projects which were not necessarily music related, which were what I was doing with TENG, to be able to put together ideas that were both evidence-based, data-driven, artistically imaginative, and yet effective. So I think that's the spiel.
No, I think actually, like what I'm hearing is that your awakened journey starts since you were young.
Yeah.
Because that's the musical part of it, that you have been like awakened, right? Like a long time ago, and you actually bring what you learn and what you download, like ground it to a practical sense and continue to create. Creativity is the foundation of awakening, right? And so you continue to create, or you continue to awaken to a higher level. So I think that actually, you said that you are the least, or probably you are like the furthest along in the journey.
I was telling Michelle, I was like, huh? We talk all the time. It's like, huh? You mean this is whatever?
So I've been telling him that, he, because of the way he learned his music, right? The breath that he explained just now, the breath and the instrument and how that creates. When you hear him play, you can feel it.
Yeah.
There's an energy field that is created, and he's just doing that.
Naturally.
He's been doing that since he was a teenager.
Yes, exactly.
And he's healing himself. He's healing the people around him, and he's balancing things, right? Just by playing wholeheartedly with full presence and using his body and his instrument.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
So true. So that's how I feel.
That was his
So
beginning,
true.
right? And he's just not thinking about it. And then at this point, integrating that, and because he's fully embodied it, right?
Yeah.
He's integrating that into everything else he creates in every space. And we connected over the mindfulness pieces that they were producing and the events that they were doing around mindfulness. But there's so much more to it, right? And it's just so exciting.
Yeah, well, I didn't know. That what I was doing would lead me to today. Because when you were young, you would just think you were going to be a performer, go on stage. The next stage you will go, which concert you'll be playing in. But I think I was really lucky because I dealt with Chinese music. And it has a history of thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And it has a philosophy which is very different from that of Western music. And in it is an art as well as a science. And also in it is also an idea of holistic, or holisticism,
Right.
And so the idea of completeness, the idea of yin-yang balance, or literally the idea of balance, has always been a natural extension of my own practice. And it was taught to me by various teachers. I just didn't realize it could be useful in such a way.
Yeah. And I think, as we now, like, we kind of just have different framework to validate the same thing.
Yes.
And then it's just that it feels so, like now, there's yin and yang, or like in the Western term, it's masculine and feminine. But it's all kind of back to the same thing, no matter which corner. And that's what I find, that whatever tool that I tried and I learned, and come back to the same answer, right? And it's actually gearing, like I learned a lot of the Western side of the tools first, right? Because I lived in the States for 20 over years, right? And then it's actually everything pointing back to the Eastern philosophy in many ways, like the yin and yang and the Taoism and everything. So I think that when you talk about the fusion between the East and the West, I think this is kind of coming together nowadays, that more and more like is become one.
Yeah, and I think the world is converging in many aspects. With technology, everything moves so quickly. But I think what is so beautiful is that these ancient technologies have had so much value, so much meaning, and so much grounding.
Yes.
And they deserve to have a platform in modern day.
Yeah.
It's just that in modern day, we need a lot of evidence-based practices. And that's how the medical sort of practice actually comes about in that sense. So how we converge it together, how we present it together, and how we show that the philosophies work and can be complementary to our modern day practices is incredibly important.
Yeah, yeah. And I like what you talk about Sang medicine. I think that is something that I also very into and continue to learn more about.
Yeah, Dr. Wong, I think your journey is just super inspiring to me because especially as a teenager right now, like we face the constant pressure of having to rush things, and also especially even when we get into this work in the first place, like we feel like a lot of people are already ahead in the journey, we're like left behind. But then you really show me that we just got to trust time. It's easy to say it, but then it's so hard to trust the universe because so many things around us are distracting us and so many things are happening. But it's really about just trusting the flow, right? Like, and trusting that as long as you do the thing that feels natural to you, that you're passionate about, then eventually over time it will all merge together in like a beautiful way, as you've said. Like, after exploring so many different fields, it all holistically just somehow blends together.
The universe brings it to you together, I would like to add to that a little bit. It's not only trusting time, but there needs to be a really purposeful intention as to what you are doing. The reason why I could get to where I was, it was because I believe in form, meaning, and then self. At the first and basic level of form, you do repetitive things. You do really boring things. Like in music, we do scales. And you have to master form. For example, the language. We need to learn how to spell properly first. And then after we learn how to spell, and we mastered that, we go on to a second stage, which is meaning. How do others spell? How do others write? Why are there books? How do they actually, create sentences together? Why exactly? And what stories are interesting? And how do people tell stories? So the meaning becomes second. Once you've mastered that, then you go on to the third level, which is self. What do you say? What is your identity, and why is it special? What is your place in the world, and why is it that what you say matters? And then with this process in mind, that's where the self-confidence comes in, because you really know what you're talking about and you really know what is out there and your form is strong. So in short, don't take shortcuts in any of the process. I think a lot of young people, and I've taught a lot of my university students, the thing about the speed of our society nowadays is that everybody needs things quite instantaneously.
Yes, and they're always looking for a hack or a shortcut, or like, how do I, leapfrog and get ahead of the others. And
get rich quick schemes.
Yeah. And things take time.
Yeah, and exactly like music taught me that you have to practice to get the sound. You don't practice, you don't get the sound. So music and sports are quite similar in that aspect, because you can actually just see it, But nowadays there are a lot of other areas in which you can kind of take shortcuts and get away with it. But in some of these fields, you guys call modalities. I learned this new word. You can't take shortcuts. Yeah, and when you have built that level of confidence or built that level of skill, that's also where confidence is built. Yeah.
No, that's a very good point. Yeah. So actually, for all the young people out there, like any IG, Instagram saying that you can get results in 2 days. Probably.
Or get rich quick.
Yeah. That's probably have to think twice, right? And that is part of the other thing that I learned, is the law of the universe, or the principle of the universe. One of it is called the law of correspondence, and correspondence is like as above, so below, right? So how deep your root is how high your tree go, right? So then that is kind of the principles of how things work in life, and in the entire universe. So just keep that in mind as well, that however fast it is, and you can maybe get a little bit of results, but it's not gonna last.
Yeah, and I also think that people have to go through that journey first in the beginning, and we can't exactly tell you or determine when you're going to make this transition, but then it's like you will get that body feeling of something feeling not right for you, or just losing meaning in general. And it's like eventually, even though at times you may like disregard that feeling, it will bite back to you, and you will it's kind of like you're being cornered to look into these things eventually. So if like right now you're thinking about like, is this really right for me, or is this like, should I take this step or not? It kind of is to a certain extent predetermined, but then also like the best way to know is listen to your own body, right? Just shut off the video and just listen to your body afterwards and just see how you feel about it. Right? Do you feel that spark inside of you? And I would actually love to explore more about your acting journey, Michelle, because I think it's to a certain extent paradoxical as well, because you're putting on a mask, especially when we're talking about deconditioning and delayering. But I'm just wondering, like, how have your acting journey shaped your awakening?
Okay, so I got into acting completely by accident. It was unplanned and was sort of put into this environment where I didn't speak the language, but I had to act in it. I was never trained in acting, but I had to do the job. And I was just very fortunate to be surrounded by people who were very supportive in terms of helping me with the language, helping me with what to do, right? Some camera sense or where to stand and just little tips. But I think looking back now, I was also very fortunate that they were energetically so immersed in their roles that all I really needed to do was react to them. And then that created the story that people respond to, because it's real feelings responded to with real feelings. And with each character, you also infuse a lot of yourself as you create it, as you play it against, with your other co-actors. And I think over time you realize that all these different identities are also parts of you. And that's, in the one sense, yes, they are masks, but there's also different parts of you. Sometimes I'm a bitch. Sometimes, I'm, high strung. Sometimes I'm just very quiet. Sometimes I'm very judgmental. All these things are part of you, right? Even though you infuse into a character and you take it to an extreme so the audience can see it, so they can react to it. But if you sit down and look at all these pieces, they are parts of you. And when you suppress them, when you say, oh, I'm only this, those other things are not me, then that also creates a disconnect with your inner self, right? So it's about, when people talk about shadow work, it's also looking at things that are maybe not so nice, but accepting that they are parts of you. And it is part of the human experience. And having emotional reactions are, that's what the body's designed to do. Then you look at pausing, right? Awareness comes with the pause and allowing the awareness to come, where you then can make a choice between an unconscious reaction or a very conscious choice. And it's just a pause. Just think of it as taking a breath before you respond instead of reacting. So it's having the opportunity to learn that is a great thing. And you practice that daily. And sometimes it doesn't work, right? Sometimes lots of things are going on and you're just like reacting. And then it's like, oh, wait, you catch yourself. And it's like, okay, didn't do that so well. How can I maybe give myself a little reminder to pause? Maybe you have a little signal to yourself, right? Tap a finger or like think of something, create an image. Maybe it's a sound. But find a way to remind yourself to just pause.
This I need to learn from you. Because I'm constantly doing. And I think what Michelle, you say, it's actually incredibly enlightening, because it's the pauses that give you that, and the pauses is the breath in your life. And with that, you get realigned perspectives. You get realigned motivations as well. And you have clarity.
And as you integrate the different roles you've played for me professionally as well as in life, you also realize there's parts of yourself that sort of like, yeah, really integrate. And then it's like, oh, it's not like a whole new person, but it's growth. And it's sort of a growth that you can't really chart on a graph. It doesn't go like that, right? It's a spiral. So it's a gentle growth. Sometimes you take the same lesson over again in different forms. And then you spiral upwards, but it's a spiral. It's very gentle. Sometimes there's like a quick transition, but most of the time it's very gentle, and to be patient with that and to enjoy it.
I was wondering, like, over time, do you think playing different roles and different characters, did that help you detach from a certain identity? So then that also helped you, like, objectively look at, like, your childhood shadows or, like, these conditioning patterns that you have?
One of the things it started to do was that I wasn't very attached to my name. I had so many characters with so many different names, right? And some characters were very well loved by the audience, and walking down the street or, living my normal life, people would call me by the character's name. I would react, right? And then because so many different characters, you not necessarily react in the way that you then put on that character again, but it's that the name is not important. It's that something that I created with, the whole team touched someone's heart enough that they really felt something. And this time coming back to Hong Kong and reprising a role that, I played 20 years ago in a different way, but having the reactions that the audience had where they were just so happy, so overjoyed, so like, they'd send me such heartfelt messages, on all the different platforms to say, wow, you've given me hope, like, oh, it's so happy to see this character again. And it's just filmmaking is very much a team sport, and all of us together created something that was really special. And each project touches people in ways that you can't imagine until they tell you, that you've had such an impact on their lives. And it's just, again, it's a pause, right? It's that moment where they're moved, they're excited, they're sad, they're given hope, and they look at their lives in a different way. And it's nice because you're helping people to shift perspectives, and it's a very special place to be.
I think you are a conduit for change. So you are the vessel, and then multiple things come out.
I would love to be a
You're
conduit
like a prism,
for change.
like a prism when light goes in and the rainbow comes out, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very beautiful. Actually, my aunt, she's 84, 85 now, but she used to do she's a script writer, right? And she said very similar things that, like, she take her job very seriously because in the film industry, right, everything matters. Every conversation, every characters matters because once you put it out on the screen, it actually create the ripple effect that you were talking about, that actually create a social structure, right? Like the fabrics of society, that like how people remember things, how people associate things. Right? And music is the same thing. So I think that having, like in the creative world, like you guys, I think actually is a very big and like a role in the society, and how to support and like one step at a time, like influencing and helping create a the mindsets that we want to push forward, like, and push toward.
Because with that, you inspire, right? You give them like a sense of like, no, I can change my life. You make them feel better about their lives. You make them look at and notice the little moments, the little sweetnesses that maybe in their rush to keep doing, they overlook. But to just realize that, wow, every day there is so much abundance, right? There's beauty all around us. There are these systems and cities that we live in that someone has created. And it's like, whether it's the subway system or the road system or everything has a beauty to it. And if you just stop and marvel at this beauty, right? It's just like, it just makes life so much sweeter. And because you feel that, your shoulders are relaxed, your energy is brighter, and you encourage people to react to you in the best way. You know, if you need help, someone helps you. You know, you ask nicely, like someone will help you with your bags or with the door or with whatever you need is there for the asking if you bring the right energy to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the power of the arts as well.
Yes.
Because it is both a reflection of our society, a reflection of society's past, and also the future as well. And that's the power of the arts, because it is about humanity. And when we look at humanity, we are not just judged by numbers. We are not just judged by, anything physical. It is the intangible that is the thing that people remember most before they die. It's not the most tangible things. Like, I don't think about how much money I have in my bag before I die. I'm going to die anyway, right? In that sense. And so we are dealing with, that's why the arts are essential in any society. Mm-hmm. It gives us identity, a common bonding, but it also reaffirms our position as humans. A lot of people don't understand that.
And how we relate to each other.
Exactly.
Because that's what it is to be human. Yeah. Not to just be alone. Yes, you do work on your own, you work, you're on your foundations, but it's how you live, in relation with everyone else, right? It is an interdependence.
And I think mindfulness and such modalities are also a spectrum of the arts as well, in that sense. And all around the world, you will see like arts funding, getting cut because they feel the arts programs or music programs, for example, are not very useful in schools. STEM programs are probably more important. But I think the large part is that there needs to be, again, if you follow the idea of a balance, to have a balanced life, one needs to have everything. It's like a balanced diet in that sense.
Yeah.
So one cannot think that the arts is not essential in society. It doesn't seem very apparent, but there are repercussions and effects when you pull that out from curriculum or you cut the funding for such things, because then your people become very much less, or rather they can't fulfill the potential that they can have as humans in this earth.
Yeah, totally agree. Because art actually speaks to our soul, right? And everything out the stem, and they are more mind focused. And back to the yin and yang, it is about 50-50, right? It's kind of half and half. So without arts, it's like then we cut off our soul communication, and that is very dangerous path to go down.
And our soul needs to grow too.
Yes.
And it needs fuel. It needs to be refreshed. It needs, energy. It needs, joy and adventure.
Right. The soul actually is the one that needs to grow.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Right? It's like you say, our physical body is like when it dies, just die, right? But the soul, like, is the one that can, continue to bring, like, art. Why does art, like Van Gogh, like, is here for years, like after they passed away? Why? Right? Because that energy speaks forever.
Yeah, it's so sad because nowadays we have a lot of people who are resource rich but soul broken. When it should be, as you grow older, your soul grows with you too, and then you become the change in society, or you have enough to support society in that sense. You become a better person in that sense. So there is a shift that I think many people need to, I think banks are slowly beginning to understand this. That's why there's whole entire ESG sustainability type things you see, where they realize the banks or the finance institutions need to be able to contribute back to the society, or they need to do CSR type work. But I think individually, we need to realize that we need to grow both rather than just resources.
Yeah, and then the first step of doing that is to, again, as Michelle said, and pause and slow down, right? So that we can be more conscious of ourselves. And after we start to be more aware of ourselves, then afterwards we can spread love to other people. Because if you first don't understand yourself, then it's going to be hard to understand where you're coming from on the inside, like on a deeper level, on what you're projecting outwards. So once you balance again, like both types of work, then eventually you'll be able to live more fulfilled, live with more meaning.
And I think that like for younger generation like Bosco is even more important. I always say that even in like when I graduate, right, there's no AI, right? I can actually do a lot of random mindless thing for another 10 years before I need to catch up and like grow to be a real adult. But I think with the younger generation and with AI, it kind of forcing function that you really need to know yourself much earlier on, right? Because otherwise there's you don't have the gap to catch up and be whatever right? and then wait until something happens. I think the younger generation to find yourself early on become a necessity, right, for growth.
I think this is really interesting because I read a study where the use of AI, what is the most prevalent use of AI among young people? And it's actually therapy. So a lot of them talk to AI to try to learn more about themselves. It's just coming in a very different form in that sense. And of course, what AI says is basically what they'll take in that sense, you see.
Yeah.
So there are modalities that are happening there, but it has shifted, the paradigm has shifted. And it may be, what AI says may be probably biased to a certain extent because it only works on the knowledge that's available rather than knowledge that isn't. So a lot of these ancient knowledges that, for example, we might have in Chinese music that might not necessarily be available there. So it's skewed into a certain design or to a paradigm, and then you will get people who have very similar responses and thought processes. No doubt the capabilities of AI is growing, more information is being added, but people are beginning to know how to talk like how ChatGPT talks, for example. So that is an interesting phenomenon that I'm increasingly interested in, that more people are finding a new way of self-discovery through AI. But number two, AI, more people as a result have their responses or their thought processes to be very similar to AI. So there's this circular sort of loop that is happening, and it means ancient modalities, say that we have in let's say my music for mindfulness, in ancient Chinese music, these kind of get discounted out, and because they are not as established, and the only way to get them established is to get research papers published on them, to get them publicized, to get them pulled out into the international community. And so it becomes so much more imperative for a lot of the modalities that you guys practice and to be put out there and to be recognized and to be substantiated and to be adopted by communities such that, AI can actually put them up.
Yeah, exactly. And that's actually part of the whole reason why I wrote my book. Right? If Michelle was in my book launch back in February, and it is so because I see AI is a mirror of our collective consciousness. Right? And so it is super important for us to know, one, like when people talk about AI safety, AI governance, but like at the back of it, I say, well, but whatever the AI learned is a reflection of what we learned. And to your point, the AI only collect information while whoever feed it into the big data, right? So all of us become the parent of AI to fit what we, at least like for us, that like what we feel like the right things to do, right? Was the everything that we have the responsibility to interact with the AI the right way, right? And not taking, if we say that, the collective consciousness, this mirror of AI, say, I do A and I accept it, right? That is not how it's going to work, right? It's the same in the real world. So we kind of, and human, especially younger generation, is even more important to have this critical thinking when the AI give us a response. Is that really what I believe? Like, how do I be the scientist to trust or distrust? How do I actually examine the answer of AI? And us as adults also continue to train AI. Everyone can train AI the way that could feed the information, like traditional, like classical Chinese music. How do we make sure that it is going into the big data? Like, every one of us have the responsibility to train the AI. So I think that's the reason why I wrote the book, is so that we awaken in that sense, that we are not just gonna get dragged along with this AI trend.
Although, what you say about using it for therapy, there is, I don't know, I feel like there are limits to what it can provide in terms of therapy. Yes, it can digest all of the frameworks and modalities and take, someone through the traditional or tested or researched ways of therapy or counseling. But there is a human element in any sort of coaching or therapy or whatever you want to call it, where there's a shared energy. And like with the people I coach, when even if we're not in person, when you drop into the other's field and you're in that shared field, you know where they're coming from, even if their words say something else. And you know how to guide them towards what they're seeking in terms of the next step or some kind of insight. You guide them, right? You're not giving them, you're not feeding them, but you're guiding them towards an insight in a way that makes sense to them in that moment. And that's a feeling that I don't know if you can get from just like going through the step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are the questions. This is what usually happens. You're basing it on like a general population. Not everyone fits into this general population reaction understanding, right? So there is a human element that is important in therapy.
I totally agree with you. I think AI can do personalization, but it cannot do the experiential.
Yes.
Because I think the experiential is the thing that moves you. It can give you steps, but it cannot give you feeling in that sense. And experiential is the thing that you carry most through the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Like, for example, you fell down and there's pain. And you remember the pain. And then of course, the trauma happens or something like that.
Or not.
Yeah. And you have a scar to show for it, for example, Yeah, in that sense. So the body has a memory of that pain.
Yes.
But similarly, the body has a memory of the healing as well. Yeah. And I think that's where people need to find ways to heal each other with that in mind. And that becomes incredibly powerful. Yeah. It's like one person helping another person, but remembering that help was occurred. Because how many times have other people helped us, but we forgot?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the idea is that it becomes significant and it becomes important. Yeah. And then that's where the gratitude comes. And then the pay it forward later happens. Yeah.
Because you feel supported by the community, supported by the universe.
Yeah, and also one thing that AI really cannot give us, to your point earlier, as an in-person, rather is in-person or even through on Zoom, because as human, that's where like we have the frequency and the vibration and the energetic that come with it, even with our voice, right? Just by speaking, there is also certain frequency and vibration that it created a space. And how we help each other sometimes, like you see that like sometimes when your friend is sad, it's not about like just chatting with them. You're just sitting next to them, right? Have a drink together in silence and that person all of a sudden feels better, right? Why? It's because our energy is healing in a way, and when we hold space for the other person, and that is not something AI can do. Right, and I think that is very important of this like community that you're referring to, and why we need to bring people together, right? To actually, it's even more important now than ever.
Yeah, the experience.
Yeah,
Yeah. And along the journey, as I guess my frequency was changing, I was interested in these different things. You attract people who are also on that journey, and that community builds. And like traveling in a plane, and it's like, oh, it's messy, it's chaotic, especially holiday time and all that. And it gets me frazzled. Noise really, is very triggering for me. If it's noisy, if it's chaotic, if there's too many people, if there's not enough space. And for me, it's just a matter of like coming here, and Ryion gives me a hug, and I'm like, oh, and it's just like, even in Singapore, right? I'm like in traffic, and there's, and then I come and, we come to see Sam, and it's just like, okay.
That's why it's called a love language. Physical touch, no?
Right? And it's so powerful. It's so powerful. Yeah. It's also trusting the relationship, right? So those friendships, those relationships that have that trust, that sacred space, it's just it's very helpful.
yeah,
But you have to open up to them.
Yeah. I think it's again like finding the balance with opening up and also stillness, because recently I've been looking a lot into like figuring out like my own psyche and trying to learn more about my deep patterns. And what I've actually realized is, in the beginning, it's like you try to look at so many different sources. Like I have like 5 different tabs open on my computer, and I'm like swiping left and right and just trying to piece everything together because there's so many information out there. But what I tried to do most recently, which shocked me a lot, is just try and let go. So I just dropped straight into meditation. I started off with a few breaths. Not even meditation, it's just a few breaths.
That's all it takes.
And then I just, because I could feel my mind clenching a lot, especially when we're doing like a lot of the hard work in our in modern society, especially with like writing, like you can feel like it's not coming through. There's something stuck. But then once you just release your mind, and it's kind of like letting your head open up, right? You can imagine yourself like literally opening up your head to the sun. Eventually, it's like things just gets downloaded. Like when you start playing around with different pieces inside your head, not even like physically seeing, like inside your mind without forcing anything or without expecting a result, it's like it just magically comes together. Like new insights just pieces together without you expecting anything. And it's just fascinating for me, especially when like we're always taught to work harder, right? Train harder when you want to achieve something, when it's just more about finding that thing where you naturally flow, where you're actually really good at, and then just letting it come through without effort. I think there's a saying called Wu Wei in Taoism, which talks about just finding the middle path and finding peace within you.
Yeah. Trusting the flow. Trusting the flow, not trying to control the flow, not trying to get to this outcome, or this outcome, but just flowing with it. And, a completely different outcome, could show up, and it's like, it'll be amazing.
yeah. Actually, just in Monday, I send a newsletter out every Monday. Like my last newsletter talk about this, and I thought it's very important. Is that so the way we see our body, right? And it's like our body is the vehicle of our life. Yeah, our soul is the driver of our life. So what does our mind do? Nothing. our mind
Connects the body and the soul. They were supposed to do
It's the
that.
arms and legs, I guess.
No,
It's the arms and legs.
the mind actually, they treat it like a dashboard, right? Because we use the mind to tell story, to create a story like a dashboard, like, give a measurement of our experience between our vehicle and the driver, right? But if we start making the dashboard do all the work, hey, you're the dashboard, like it's like, but okay, can you make a decision to go left and right? They can't. It's just a dashboard. So I think we have been misusing our mind in a way that we think it's the dashboard is the smartest thing on earth, like or in our body, but actually it's just a dashboard, right? We need to go back to the driver, our soul, to drive the vehicle, which is our body, right? The mind is just sit in the passenger seat and look out of the window.
Yeah, and I also find the mind justifies the actions as
Yes.
well. So before there's any way to sort of jump out, the mind also traps your decision making in that sense.
Yes. So it's like like when the passenger, you guys drive, right? If the passenger's like turn left, turn right, oh no, you see that the passenger, the one that sit next to us, it feels like that.
Yeah.
That is what our mind is.
So I think the lesson to be learned is that the mind can trap, and the idea is to go beyond the trappings and to be curious about everything and anything, and not limit oneself.
Yeah, and trust the driver to drive, and keep giving comment.
And don't be afraid to crash. That's part of life anyway, right?
Yeah.
Like, I totally empathize with what you said just now. Like that you're working so hard and so many things, and it really I really empathize with a lot of students that I had, because we have an information overload right now, especially with a lot of young people. I mean, when I was around, we didn't have smartphones. Okay, do you still remember dial-up in the internet?
Yes,
Yeah.
I was around when there was no internet.
I was around. Okay, you're revealing our ages right now. Let's not go there. But yeah, and so a lot of our young people right now have so much information to process, and social media doesn't help, because a lot of these social media companies gain more money when you actually doom scroll. So the more you do it, the more views there are in that sense. And to navigate this, your mind is constantly on an active mode. And if it does that, what are the amounts or chances that it has the capacity to be able to go out of its normal reach when it's already so full, processing all this current information that we have?
It's overwhelming.
Exactly. And so then from that processing of that information, what works for you, kind of thing. And then that becomes so much more difficult because you have too many choices. Your identity isn't built, or rather your identity is usually built over time. But then when you have a multiple set of choices that happen over time, it just gets confusing. And we have a very confused generation.
Yeah. And there's no space for them to actually feel and think like about who they are, what they are, right? And it's just like it's bombarded with oh, maybe I'm this, oh, maybe I'm that, oh, maybe I don't know, right? It just becomes very confusing.
Yeah, and to add to that, there's no way, there are very few places that have structured ways to teach young people to feel and think.
This is why Bosco is around. We have hope.
Like, as you were saying, creating safe spaces in that sense.
Yeah, talking more about like this whole like social media doom scrolling, especially in the beginning, once you realize that there's a lot of guilt that you feel. And I just want to take an opportunity to go around the table and talk more about how the journey is really slow, in the sense where in the beginning you realize that you're doom scrolling, and then there's lots of heavy emotions, and you tell yourself that you're going to stop scrolling social media, but then the next day you go back to do it. What actually happens over time is we need to be aware of the thing and try not to judge it, because when the mind judges it, it just reinforces this whole loop of self-sabotage. Like you constantly, it's like when you drink alcohol and then you feel bad for drinking alcohol, and then you drink more alcohol to solve that. You're kind of feeding your mind to do the same thing. So instead, it's more about finding awareness and finding the consciousness to do these activities. I mean, that's what I found most useful, especially when I'm trying to transform my bad habits into other habits. And I think it's really not stressed upon on how it's, again, a gradual journey, because a lot of the times, people share about how they're transformed in 30 days, right? But then that may not be the case for everyone, because everyone is so distinct in different ways. So I was wondering with you guys, like, what were some of the transformations that took time in order to transform? And as long as you're aware of it, then eventually it does transform to something greater or something more beautiful.
I can start. But my transformation, actually, I don't know if I'm strange in that way. So, but I guess I have a very determined mindset. So for me, and everyone is different, so I think we all share our own way and see which one stick for like the audience. But for me, like, so when I was a kid in college, I used to smoke, right? And then when I decide not to smoke, because of my girlfriend then, wife now, right? And it's like, no, don't come close to me if you smoke. And then it's like the next day when I decided, I stopped completely. I decided completely. Like,
No withdrawal symptoms?
no, nothing. I was just like, no. I just like look at the cigarette, just throw it away, done. 10 years later, similar things that I decided to become a vegetarian, and then I go actually all the way. And I used to be like grilling beef. I'm a grill master. Like I have all the gear and everything. And then I decided that no. Well, actually, because I watched some Netflix, and then it's like this, and then all these documentaries, like, oh, this is scary. I was like, I am not gonna eat meat, especially I'm not gonna eat American meat, right? So I decided it, and then I go all the way to the extreme, not just even vegetarian, vegan. I was like, I'm gonna go do vegan. Stop. The next day, I go on Carousel, sold my grill, and then the person who picked up my grill said, "Are you sure you're not gonna come pick it up? Like, I'm not gonna return it back to you." So that is kind of how I deal with bad habits. Like if I make a decision, I actually go all the way, and I was like actually sell or discard everything that is in my line of sight. That nothing. And then once I go extreme, then like now it's like 4 or 5 years in, even I come back, but I do not have the craving ever, right? I can eat a little bit of meat, but that's okay, right? But that is for my health. Now meat is my supplement, but not the main dish. But that's kind of like, so for me, my way is like go super extreme and then cut it off and then slowly go back to the balance. So that's my way.
Well, I can go second then.
Okay.
So, as I said, previously we mentioned about things being a balance, right? Yin and yang, So I don't really think of bad habits as like a bad habit, in that sense. It's always a continuum for me. But the idea is where is the balance? How much do you drink in that sense? I personally don't drink because it's not that I have anything against drinking. I just don't like alcohol in that sense. It doesn't vibe with me. But there are other vices. So happy to share that there are vices in all of us. But that being said, I always think that life has, as a continuum, you move. And because you as a person move. So as your journey moves, so does your impression, and so does your approach to various activities in your life. As I said, like when I was young, practice was my passion because I loved music to that extent. Then it moved and it moved and it moved and moved again. And the fact that I'm here talking to you guys right now was the fact that life gave me this whole entire opportunity of thought leadership, When I was young, I didn't even know what thought leadership was. It wasn't even a term. Like, in 90s in China, what is thought leadership? If you told people that I'm going to do this as my job, people will think that you're mad. People never knew about AI in that sense. You will grow as you learn. But the point is, if you don't learn, you don't grow. And as your I think restrictions, that will move as you grow, and it will sort of take different types of shapes because your values will change, your person will change, and as a result, your perspectives and the things that you can contribute to society would change. Like my contribution right now is not necessarily as a pipa player in the world. It used to be that, but not very much anymore. I still do play in concerts very rarely, but I think the value that I bring to society has moved in a very different way. And of course, then the devices come in a totally different way as well.
I mean, I think it's back to the awareness thing, right? So when you have a bad habit, you have awareness of like, oh, I doom scrolled again. And sit with that for a moment to see what is it that you're covering up or trying to numb or trying to look for? Is it comfort? Are you trying to run away from something? And just sit with it until it sort of shows you show you what it is you're avoiding. And then you can sort of look at that and see what you can do around it. Because if it's something you're avoiding, then face it. And if you face it, then sort of the addiction floats away in that sense. If you're talking about things like doom scrolling. Other times it might indicate parts of shadow work that you need to go to, right? Sit with it. Sit with the feeling of it. What does this bad habit, if it's a bad habit, what does this bad habit create? What am I looking for here? Is it a memory? Is it some sort of comfort? And sometimes it's just patterns, right? And yes, I sometimes get into like patterns and repetitive behavior, and my friends will kindly point it out.
We will be your friends.
Not just the friends here, but our other friends will kindly point it out. And then sometimes you're in an emotional reaction and it's like, what do you mean? And then you're like, oh, yes, thank you.
But that's an opportunity to learn.
Yes, and you go back to being able to step away and observe. Right?
Exactly.
It's that observation that gives you the clues to what is the next step. What do I do here? What is this showing me about me? And it's the pause.
Yeah.
Back to the pause, awareness, observation.
I also want to add to Michelle's point that when you learn, you overcome, you build resilience.
Yes.
Then you grow as a person as well.
Yes.
When you resist, you create blockages. So, again, pause, observe, learn, integrate. Then you move on to the next lesson.
But like with doom scrolling, sometimes I also catch myself like start scrolling, and then like afterward, what I do is like I try to reflect on what am I looking at that is like actually attracted me to look at, and then so that instead of like blaming myself on like, oh, I just spent 10 minutes looking at white dogs because I love dogs, right? And I realized that, oh, yeah, it's because it's my love of animals. And then it's okay. Man, that actually gives me 10 minutes of break. Like I'm not going to do it for 30 minutes. And I think sometimes it's just that grace. And then realize that as long as the things that I'm looking at is aligned with myself and it's 10 minutes of my time, then I say, okay, I can justify that. I'm happy with looking at cute dogs that make me laugh. Fine. So, but I think having that reflection on what content am I consuming and are those contents actually healthy for me? So that would be a reflection that at least afterward that we could do.
So not judging the action, as good or bad, right? Because the
As a
moment you judge, there's a block.
Yes.
You judge, which means you create that polarity, this is bad. You don't approach it like that. It's more like, oh, observe with curiosity
Yeah.
and, oh, what did this do? What is this? What am I looking at? How does this feed me? Or how does this give myself a break from what I was focused on before? And it's like, okay, this is okay. And it's really that, right? It's that conscious choice,
Awareness.
awareness, not judgment,
Yeah.
not right, wrong.
Like the continuum.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's not polarities.
Yes, it's not polarities.
And the ancient Chinese had this already anyway. Just pointing it out.
Well, I think everything that we talk about, the ancient Chinese figured it out.
I know.
We just translate it.
I'm sure ancient India had certain things as well. It's just that I'm familiar with this because in that sense.
It's very interesting because I think one of the most beautiful things with social media itself is that through social media, you can actually find what you are actually passionate about. Because a lot of the times, like when you talk to someone who's doom scrolling and you ask them, like, why are you doom scrolling? They're like, oh, I don't know what to do. I'm bored. But then in reality, the thing that they're scrolling in social media is literally the thing that they should be doing in their lives. But it's just that they're not aware of it and they don't want to put the action to get to understand like what's actually attracting me to this reel. Like for example, like if you're watching like a reel of someone skydiving, maybe that may say that you're lacking like some kind of action in your life. You're lacking some kind of sport. Maybe you have to do something that's adventurous, right? Maybe adventure is the value point. So then with that point, then you can like reflect on what areas in my life I can integrate this into, so then you can actually start living the social media, like literally the social media like video that you're watching.
I think what scares me is not really that, but I'm a little bit more afraid that a lot of things on social media, some of them aren't real. And when they aren't real, the energy behind that is just fake, and people take it as real, you see. So there needs to be some regulation around here.
Discernment.
Yeah.
So discernment, taking it as a suggestion. For example, if you're looking at skydiving, adventure is always the best thing in life, right? Adventure gives you that opportunity to explore, to discover new things. It doesn't have to be skydiving specifically. It's just that recognizing that, oh, I like looking at this. Maybe I need more adventure. How can I find adventure in my life? You know, as a student, as a teenager, what areas can I explore within the city I live in or the village I live in that is adventurous, that is taking a different path, that's something I haven't done before? It's that, rather than saying, oh, if I look at skydiving, I'm going to go skydiving. Or if I look at, I think there were people jumping into some like empty pools or whatever, like things like that, right? Not doing it literally, but reflecting on it, and it's like, oh, what am I seeking here?
The
And how
value,
do I, yeah.
But also today, in today's AI world, you have a lot of fake content that looks so incredibly real in that sense. And when that happens, there's a potential, if people are unethical, to do all sorts of things. And a lot of these other messages with no good intention actually comes up because the main value is money in that sense. So I think that is something that worries me a lot, because discernment does not necessarily come naturally to a lot of people. And although we may have media education and stuff like that, people can manipulate platforms for their own purposes in that sense. So more than ever, I think we need to be able to find ways to make sure that we can protect a lot of our young people from, and give them the skills of discernment as well.
Let's
in that
talk
sense.
about that. How do you develop discernment?
Yeah, and I think that's why it's all come back from awareness, right? Because awareness of self, right? I think that's really the beginning of discernment. Right? When we look at content, I feel that there is one that we can tell immediately, or we need to teach people like to tell immediately, rather content what type of energy does it have, right? That's one type of awareness, right? How does the message align with us or not? Right? That's another type of discernment and awareness, right? And then how do we build awareness actually in the most simplistic form? Back to very early on, you say pause, breathing, right? And that is, I was actually like someone asked the question, why do we do meditation, and how do I know when I meditate well, right? What's the benchmark? What's the KPI? Right? There's no KPI on this, but right, the meditation actually is not about the meditation, but it's almost like a tool to help us improve our awareness, right? So the KPI in a way that is in the daily life outside of meditation, and I become more aware of everything, aware of the smell, aware of the sound, aware of the birds, right? Aware of the car, right? Everything. The more we are aware, then what we are aware, we can aware of synchronicity. We can aware of opportunities, right? Then we're aware of like, oh, this video seems odd. So that is also meditation is not about meditation, but it's about the focus on the breathing. So through the breathing, then we can become more aware.
An awareness of risk.
Right. Then that awareness become discernment. Right. It's hand in hand. And that's kind of like, if I have to distill, right, of all my 6 years of learning, that is the most simplest form of improve our awareness.
That's an amazing insight. That something so basic could actually deal with something so complex.
Right. And people always like, I can't meditate. I was like, why can't you meditate? Because if I close my eyes, I start thinking. And I was like, that's good. That's you're actually, I give you a medal because you're actually aware that you're thinking. That's good. That's a good start. Yeah. Right. So everyone, like a lot of people come to me and say, I can't. It's like, no, you can't. Because people think that meditation means I have to think nothing. I was like, that's not possible. That's not human.
Yeah.
I think even the high monk, right, the Lama, they also would say that their thoughts just come through. Yeah, it's how much we are aware of the thought. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it goes back to, again, with everyone's points, is about like, there are some things which are universal, but then there's also some things which are distinct for yourself. For example, like with the universal one is, with everyone being more aware, then we're eventually going to be able to be more aligned with our higher self, be more aligned with finding meaning in our lives. So that's going to be like the universal principle for everyone. But then that can happen in so many distinct forms. So going back to the point on the KPI, like to satisfy our left brain, because our left brain likes to have logic all the time. Like one of the core KPIs or symptoms that we can find is being able to feel that body transformation, right? Do you feel that your head is lighter? Do you feel that you're more active in certain areas because of this? Or do you just feel a sense of peace, right? That can itself be a symptom to tell you that you're on the right path. So then you can have the guide. So again, it goes back to the spectrum of balancing the not knowing and also balancing the knowing, right? The left brain and also the right brain.
Yeah.
And that's why doing like yoga or Pilates, those help, because if you actually took on and learn those forms, it's all about awareness, like how your hand movement, how your body's movement. That is also a form of awareness training.
Yeah.
I think one thing Michelle has taught me is that to not be limited to any of my knowledge and to learn, and you don't know, try.
Yeah.
Don't know, try. And don't say, for example, I am not aware of it. Does not necessarily mean that I can't be. And, Michelle's adventurous spirit, she takes it. She learns everything. I was like, oh my God, you really? Then I follow her to like very interesting things. I was like, like a TCM workshop. I was like, really? Okay, yeah. So that was something that I learned from Michelle.
Yeah.
If we were talking about awareness, that there is no bias whatsoever, and you learn everything, and then you distill whatever things that
you
work for
try.
you. Yeah.
You try with curiosity, with an open mind, and you take what works for you. But you also enjoy the whole process, right? Even the stuff that's like, oh no, like, but why did I do that? But it was to experience it, you know?
Yeah.
And that's it's just part of the pleasure of the human experience, really. Experiencing everything, trying everything, and not saying necessarily, oh, this is bad, I would never do that. It's just something to try and experience and, understand and discard if it doesn't align with who you really are.
Yeah, that's a very, very, very good point, because oftentimes when at the beginning of our self-discovery journey, it feels that we have most of us have a very clear identity, right? And this identity, we think that we must hold on to, without knowing that majority of our identity, it was conditioned. It wasn't really ours, right? But we hold on to it entire life, right? And then it's like, oh, I know myself very well. That's me. And then you block off all the actual growth opportunities.
Yes.
So one of the most important things is also, first is like knowing which part of your identity is really yours to begin with, right? Dr. Wong maybe actually have a very early identity that is clear because it comes from your passion, right?
But my identity shifted, you
Right,
see.
and then you
Yeah, but that's
shift
growth.
over.
Yeah.
That's growth.
Yeah.
Right, but a lot of us might not even have the opportunity to have to express the passion, right? When we grow up in a family that might not allow passion, might follow certain things, and then those identity that we thought it was our identity, right, become very stuck. Right, so I think that deconditioning is one of the key things, so that we can open up to try different things, so we can actually then find our own identity.
Yeah, I want to point out, when we are young, we don't know our identities will change. And so you will always have a fixed mindset. It's
Yes.
like, I want to head to this goal, but now looking back, you just realize that goal actually wasn't the goal. In fact, there is no the goal. In that sense. But when you are young, when I was in my 20s, or even before that, teens, it's like, oh, this is the goal. If I hit this, I will be blah, 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 blah. And now looking back, you just realize that didn't matter at all. Because it was just part of that stepping stone or that journey of what you are going to experience in life. And that is also the reason why at this point of time, you just go to where life leads you in that sense. Be open to that level of experiences, hold that level of curiosity, and then open your heart to all sorts of things.
Yeah. And that's why it's like, when we were young in school, did you guys have always there's one class or one homework that we have to take? It's like, what do you want to be
When you grow up.
when you grow up? That is that's like the worst question, because you would never know when you were young, unless you're one of the few that already have all the talents that build in.
I remember that. I said I wanted to be a teacher. If not, I don't mind being in the service industry. I was happy to be a waiter at that period of time.
No, mine was first was policeman, then selling fishbowl.
Oh, good.
Because I love fishbowl.
You were an entrepreneur.
Yes, I was thinking that. Mine was I wanted to be a librarian, but I wanted to have my own library and be able to control who gets to come in and touch my books.
OCD! I think the large part of the exercise was for teachers to give you an imagination as to what you want to be and to give you a goal. And also to improve your, English language, writing things. But I think nobody knows for sure where or what we will naturally become.
Yeah, exactly.
And then similarly, even if we do become that, we become different versions of that we may not necessarily have expected due to the many experiences that have been built in, including traumas that have been built into the system, such that you are able to harness that to create something of yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, on this topic of identity, I just want to briefly talk about consciousness maps. And I think it's a very controversial topic, because as someone who's like seriously seeking about who are you, right? And who is this deeper version of ourselves, inevitably in this journey, you'll eventually encounter so many different systems, like most well-known astrology, human design, gene keys, and things like that. And once we say these things, like Michelle, you see a reaction. Like a lot of people will start to already have this preconception of what it is. But I think it is vastly incorrect on how people like look at these systems, because when we think about astrology, we instantly think about our life as fate, right? It's going to be, must be doing this, we must be doing that. And to a certain extent, that's more like, I think, someone else interpreting your life themes. And the word themes is really important in understanding this knowledge, is because it's a self-knowledge. That's, I think, the number one principle, right? It's a self-knowledge which you need to more so like process the feelings within these things and kind of sift out for yourself. It's not something that's like really easily accessible. And a lot of the times when people tell you that you are this or you are that, it's just their interpretation of something. It's not like you will be that, but it's just based on their, like how they see your chart. But then the thing is, of course, the chart does bring particular aspects out, but then it does it in like a really broad and undefined sense also. It depends on how you look at it. So I was wondering, like, what do you guys think about this as well with your own experience?
Well, Ryan deep dived.
I mean, it's obviously an interest and a passion, so...
Yeah, deep dive.
I think my deep dive also coming from the interest that I mentioned my aunt, that like she was actually a master in Feng Shui and a lot of the astrology's knowledge, and she deep dive on her own in her own way. But actually, you're right on, Bosco, in the way that it is a lot of the time in the olden day, right? A lot of the so-called like the Feng Shui master that like are fortune tellers, right? The way they tell you the story about you, like there will be some good one, but a lot of the people that try to just create a livelihood and make a business out of it, of course they have to tell you something bad so that you can continue to go back and
seek recourse.
Exactly. But it's not like it's something. But what I learned from different modality and like rather is like human design, gene key, and the Chinese tradition as well. They all actually is a system that they like historically. I actually don't know how they learn it. I really think that it's like some sort of like download, right? Because it's just so complex, and when I tried, I couldn't understand most of it. But what I do know that is it is not a system to tell you that your life is fixed, but it is somewhat a blueprint. Like if you have a house, right, you need a blueprint. Right, but it's just the blueprint of the basic. But how you build your house can be very, very, very different, right? It's just it's a square, and then you can build a castle, you can build a hut, however you want, right? So that kind of that blueprint is like it give us some knowledge of how the best use of this land, right? Or our vehicle, like earlier I mentioned. And then on top of it, I would say that is like 1% of the house, like the blueprint is 1% of how your house will look like, but it's also the most important, right? That 1% is very important. So knowing that blueprints is just give us an idea on what am I good at, what am I more less good at, right? And how does my vehicle perceive things, right? So maybe I am like a Toyota Honda, or I'm a Honda, or I'm a Toyota Camry, or I am a supercar Ferrari. I don't know, right? But that's the vehicle that comes with it, right? But what do you do with it is very, very different. So I think that's how I see different modality. And when we approach with openness, but knowing that each of the knowledge is give us a guideline on what is like our function. It's almost like a user manual, right? It's a user manual, like what is the function?
Like a guide in the
Yeah,
sense,
yeah. How does it work, right? What is like I might be like good at distilling knowledge. That is my skill, right? And then actually throughout, and maybe when you're 17 you might not know, but then when I look at it, throughout my life I say, yeah, actually I am really good at that. Since I was young I do this, and there is actually evidence to prove it, right? So that's kind of like you have to like become the scientist to, there is evidence to prove that, and how do I deal with myself with this knowledge?
Yeah, I mean, I found it really helpful, and I love learning new things. So I loved learning human design and gene keys, looking at the themes, right, and really sort of remembering at different times when I'm, engaged in something, and suddenly something feels like, oh, this is like I love this, and then it's like, oh yeah, actually this part of my chart said that this is one of my strengths, or like this part of the chart said that this is something I should develop and work on, right? And you're like, oh, that's interesting that it does relate in that way. And sometimes when you're trying to solve a problem in your life, when you're trying to solve a challenge, and you're like, oh, why is this so difficult and whatever, and then you look at the chart and you realize, there is a lesson that is related to these things that I need to distill from this.
It provides a support system for you.
In a way, it's sort of like
Options
an
for you.
option to think about, oh, wait, let's look at this as what do I learn from this, right? It's just however you get to that space of learning, distilling, understanding, integrating, and then moving on, right? And this can be very helpful. And it's just fun to learn. It's like learning a different language, because with the language comes all this culture, right? What the gift of being in Hong Kong at the time, and learning the language and the culture and the skill all at the same time was just like you're just immersed in this. And there's like even the movies that are made in Hong Kong, they come to Singapore and they're dubbed in Mandarin because government policy, and it loses that essence and that flavor. It's just not the same. So each language, there's something about it that really lends itself to, you feel that culture, you understand the jokes, you get that there's some background to it.
There's
and
lingo,
it's
that
just,
happens,
you know what I
yeah.
mean? So each of these things is like a different language, and it's fun. It's fun to apply like different filters on top of a situation and just see what patterns it creates.
Yeah, it's almost like the Lego menu, right?
Yeah.
So you just take those, and then find a menu that works for you, and then you create your own best Lego out of this, right? But without a menu, it still work. It just takes longer to figure it out how to put it together. Doesn't mean it doesn't work, right? It's like most of us live life without the menu, and it still sort of looks like a Lego. I don't know. Yeah.
But it's just additional tool.
Yeah.
Well, I approach it from a very different perspective. It's almost like an academic, analytical perspective. That comes from my background, so sorry for that. I apologize. I think that these are tools, and of these tools, there are multiple different interpretations because everybody takes a different stand on it. That's also why people made money out of it in that sense, right? But the tools are still the tools, and it provides me a whole set of outcomes. For example, this will happen, which then informs my strategies and my risks. The strategies which I can sort of like leverage on, and the risks which I should sort of ring fence with. And when I'm able to do that, it gives me a sense of stronger confidence in which I can be able to live my life. So it's a very practical way in which I see. I mean, very unlike Michelle, who sees this and like, oh yeah. So I don't see this as necessarily a support system. I see it more as a mat work that I can use to navigate and to grow even better than whatever that I'm currently doing. And if it says that there are challenges there because the sun says this or the moon says this or the whatever. And then I see if there are alignments. And I think because personally I'm a little bit, my character and identity is quite formed in itself already. And I do know who I am and what I am. Then I see the alignments and I see the differences. And from the differences, can I be able to learn? From the alignments, can it be reinforced?
Yeah, beautiful. It's the balance between the right and the left.
Yeah. And I think to your point on that, like if some people might challenge like, hey, the moon and the sun, how does it matter? But at the end of the day, if we go back to our earlier point on everything is about energy and frequency and vibration. It's natural if we know that like the moon energy create a high tide and low tide. It means that the planets and objects out there that have an impact on ourselves, right? On human, on the earth and everything, that our movement, the 5 elements and everything. So when that and with that understanding, and then it's actually for me it's very logical that of course that if the sun have certain things like and the planet to have a different movement, it will create a different energetic field that will have an impact on us. So that's kind of how I see it, that like, and when we start to see energy, vibrations, and frequency is part of life, then it kind of opened up and say, yes, then all these tools and can have an impact on us, and that is part of opening up ourselves to different possibility.
Yeah, absolutely. And the measurement of sound is through frequency.
Yes,
Hertz.
exactly.
Sorry, very geeky right now.
No, that's great.
But it's because of the frequencies of the hertz. We know the dogs listen to frequencies of a high level, for example. And that's why you have the dog whistles in which we don't hear it.
Right.
Dogs feel it's really painful in that sense. So it works. But how we harness it, everybody works in a different way. And that's why there are modalities.
Yes.
Amazing. Yeah. I think it just shows how everything is moving into love, right? Like no matter what system you look at and what area, even though you may be in a time where you're experiencing some kind of suffering, experience some kind of pain, but eventually it's temporary and things will all just move to harmonize together, right? That disharmonies will all come together and unite us as human beings. So just wrapping everything up, if we just go around the table and talk about like one core piece of advice you would have for your younger self or for the audience here who may be younger in like physical age but maybe older spiritually or in their souls or just in general, like one of the core wisdoms that you've had throughout in your life, what would that be? We could start with Sam.
Well, I think I mentioned this before. Life is like yin yang. It's a continuum. There's no entirely good and there's no entirely bad. But neither will your life be entirely good or entirely bad. Every feng shui person will be able to tell you that. Every single star will be able to tell you that. It's how you build the resilience, how you build the skills, how you build the ability to work around this and to be able to carry yourself through bad times and to coast across the good times and to be appreciative and to be thankful that there are good times available. And when that happens, you will have that level of gratitude and the resilience to be able to pull life through in a very much more meaningful, purposeful, and significant way.
Amazing. Michelle, do you want to share?
I really like the phrase, this too will pass. Not necessarily just because, you're in a terrible state, it's painful, you're suffering and you want it to pass, but more that even the beautiful moments will pass. So stop and savor them, And I think that's really important, to really be present, to enjoy every moment.
Sweet. What about you, Ryan?
Yeah, if one word I would say self-acceptance. I think that as we go down this path of awareness and finding ourselves and mastery, discover, right, a lot of the time we naturally try to reject who we were, right, or who we are now because we want to try to find a better version of ourselves. And I would say that only when we accept everything, good, bad, and ugly, then that's our true self. That will how we actually integrate into our new self. It's not about rejecting any part of us, of any part of self. So self-acceptance is really part of the key component of this journey.
I have a
Amazing.
mantra that I like. I shared it with you, right? It's I am who I am, and that is enough.
Yeah.
And that is just in this moment, whoever you are, wherever you are, it's enough.
Amazing. And if I have to summarize it in one word, it'll be nature, right? Just follow your natural self, follow your body, listen to your body, and find peace through stillness. So I appreciate everyone here and everyone in the audience who tuned in. You stayed with us till the end. Hope you found some of our stories insightful and also maybe have similar experience as well. So thank you for
Thank you.
joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for
And
having us.
Thank you.
catch you guys in the next one.
Thank you.
Peace out.
Thank you.